Assalamu alaikum, adab, good morning, sat sri akal, namaskar. My name is Sayyid Qaswar Abbas. Today, I'm going to talk about United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 13, climate action. Sustainable Development Goal number 13 aims to take urgent action to combat climate change and its impacts. While acknowledging that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the primary international intergovernmental forum for negotiating the global response to climate change. Climate change is caused by anthropogenic emissions of CO2 and other greenhouse gases. Climate change impacts natural and human systems globally through the increase of globally average surface temperature, extreme weather events, changing precipitation patterns, rising sea levels, and ocean acidification. These risks will ultimately impact people's livelihoods, particularly marginalized groups such as women, children, and the elderly, as resources, food, and water become more scarce. Those effects impact the other SDGs and often make it difficult to achieve them. To achieve the UNFCCC goal of limiting global temperature rise to well below 2 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels and to pursue efforts to limit the temperature increase to 1.5 degrees centigrade above pre-industrial levels, the world must transform its energy, industry, transport, food, agriculture, and forestry systems to ensure that cumulative net emissions do not exceed 1 trillion tons of cumulative carbon, which implies global net zero emissions by the second half of the century. Simultaneously, the world needs to anticipate, adapt, and become resilient to the current and expected future impacts of climate change. Companies can contribute to this SDG by decarbonizing their operations and supply chains through continuously improving energy efficiency, reducing the carbon footprint of their products, services, and processes, and setting ambitious emission reduction targets in line with climate science, as well as scaling up investment in the development of innovative low carbon products and services. In addition, companies should build resilience in their operations, supply chains, and the communities in which they operate. Before COVID-19, global community shies away from commitments required to reverse the climate crisis. 2019 was the second warmest year on record. Global temperatures are projected to rise by up to 3.2 degrees centigrade by 2100. COVID-19 may result in a 6% drop in greenhouse gas emissions for 2020, still short of 7.6% annual reduction required to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees centigrade, while only 85 countries have national disaster risk reduction strategies aligned to the Sendai framework. Also, climate finance, that is investment in fossil fuels, continue to be higher than investment in climate activities. As reported in 2016, fossil fuel investment was 781 billion US dollars and global climate finance was 681 billion US dollars. We must be concerned that climate change continue to exacerbate the frequency and severity of national disasters, that is massive wildfires, droughts, hurricanes, floods, etc., affected more than 39 million people in 2018. Key business themes addressed by this sustainable development goal: A, energy efficiency; B, environmental investments; C, greenhouse gas emissions; D, risk and opportunities due to climate change. Examples of key business actions and solutions. The below examples are non-exhaustive and some may be more relevant to certain industries than to others. A, source all electricity the company consumes at its facilities from renewable sources such as wind, solar, and hydro, or install renewable energy generation capacity on site. B. Retrofit the lighting systems of the company's facilities to energy efficient LED lighting. C. Increase investment in innovation to improve the efficiency of the company's product portfolio, thereby enabling customers to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. D. Invest in CCS, carbon capture and storage technology, to capture emissions produced from the use of fossil fuels in electricity generation and industrial processes, preventing the carbon dioxide from entering the atmosphere. E. Reduce greenhouse gas emissions from transport operations with abatement levers such as reducing the carbon footprint through greater fuel efficiency, local sourcing, model shift to lower carbon modalities, that is, air to sea freight, modular transport, improving container utilization, warehouse optimization, etc. I. Understand climate risk and build resilience into the company's assets and supply chain. F. Expand sustainable forest management through responsible sourcing practices and product substitution. How natural disasters can affect businesses. Natural disasters are catastrophic events that result from processes that occur without human intervention. These adverse events include avalanches, landslide, earthquakes, and volcanic eruptions. Floods, tsunamis, blizzards, and wildfires belong to this category as well. It is worth noting that the occurrence and intensity of natural disasters vary from country to country. Natural disasters have a significant impact on the economy and the businesses in more ways than one. Read on to know more about the impact of natural disasters on business. A. Supply chain disruptions. Efficient and reliable supply chains are critical to the success of a company. For example, the constant supply of milk is vital to the operation of a cheese making factory. Unfortunately, natural disasters interfere with these supply chains because they affect roads, bridges, and airports. More specifically, roads become impassable, bridges collapse, and airports remain closed. That means moving goods and services in affected areas is impossible. In the case cited above, the factory would stop its operations because it cannot produce cheese without receiving milk from its suppliers. B. Communication barriers. These barriers result from panic and the loss of communication infrastructure. Remember, business continuity plans are critical because they limit mass hysteria. This hysteria hampers communication because everyone is busy trying to save his or her life. The loss of communication infrastructure has an impact on the business as well. Unlike mass hysteria, which lasts for a day or two, this problem persists for weeks in extreme cases. It occurs when natural disasters destroy power stations, cell towers, and optical fiber lines. That means communicating with your staff through calls, text messages, or social media is difficult or impossible. C. Damaged buildings. Wildfires in Northern California destroyed 8,700 buildings in October 2017. Many of these buildings were business premises. For example, the fires had damaged 23 commercial properties in Sonoma and Napa by October 11, 2017. These properties included the Signorello Estate and Hilton Sonoma, Wine County. The Hilton Sonoma Wine County Hotel had enough accommodation for 250 people at the time. However, it closed down temporarily to prevent further damage to the property in addition to promoting the safety of its patrons. This example shows that natural disasters cause significant damage to commercial buildings, leading to repair costs and loss of revenue. D. Loss of equipment. Businesses have different types of equipment depending on the products they offer and the scale of their operations. For example, tractors are an essential piece of equipment on any farm. Office equipment such as printers and photocopiers are critical to business operations as well. Unfortunately, natural disasters affect them adversely. These disasters cause damage to office cabinets, chairs, and tables as well. The cost of replacing these damaged items again be crippling for many businesses. That is especially true if they do not have access to government loans or grants. E. Loss of personnel. Regrettably, people lose their lives during natural disasters. For example, 1833 people died because of the flooding that Hurricane Katrina caused in New Orleans and other parts of the Gulf Coast. Many of these people were employees at various companies across the state of Louisiana. Some of them even came from neighboring states. Consequently, businesses lost employees because of this hurricane. Some of the workers in the affected areas suffered from injuries as well. Others decided to migrate to other parts of the United States. Businesses also found it hard to hold on to employees when profits were low because of a depressed local economy. That shows you that natural disasters lead to the loss of personnel in multiple ways. F. Loss of clientele. Natural disasters lead to the loss of clientele as well because people move away from the affected area. It is worth noting that the ones who remain often spend their money on the rebuilding of their homes and businesses. That means specific establishments such as entertainment spots will see a drop in the number of patrons visiting them. Damaged goods are also another consequence of natural disaster for many companies. For example, it happens when fires burn existing stock or floods immerse them in the water. Preventing these consequences and the ones mentioned above is possible if you have a business community continuity plan. Some of the measures in this plan should be relocating stock before a disaster hits and enhancing communication while it is ongoing. Smart grid, key to managing energy demand. I'll take here the example of Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Electricity consumption in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia has been climbing steadily for the past few decades. So the electricity market is growing at an accelerating rate due to higher consumption rates in the private, commercial, and industrial sectors. Current domestic energy consuming behaviors pose inescapable fatal consequences that affect both the kingdom's production and export levels. Therefore, an urgent action is needed to curb the increasing electricity demand and promote energy conservation in the country. Smart grid is a dynamic solution which can bridge the gap between the current supply and increasing demand in Saudi Arabia. What is smart grid? A smart grid network makes for the ideal bridge where the goals of modernization can meet those of a reliable public infrastructure. Smart grid is a computerized technology based on remote control network aiming to completely alter the existing electric infrastructure and modernize the national power grid. This is through empowering the demand response which alerts consumer to reduce energy use at peak times. Moreover, demand response prevents blackouts, increases energy efficiency measures, and contributes to resource conservation and help consumers to save money on their energy bills. Smart grid technology represents an advanced system enabling two-way communication between energy provider and end users to reduce cost, save energy, and increase efficiency and reliability. B. Advantages of smart grid. The beauty of adopting this technology will spread to not only utility but to all utility users, including consumers and government. Here are the key benefits of smart grid. C. Active role of consumers. The beauty of smart grid is that it provides consumers with the ability to play an active role in the country's electricity grid. This is through a regulated price system where the electricity rate differs according to peak hours, and consequently consumers cut down their energy use at those high stress times on the grid. Thus, a smart grid offers consumers more choices over their energy use needs. D. Upgrading the existing grid. Utilities benefit from improving the grid's power quality and reliability, as mentioned, through an integrated communication system with end users with more control over energy use. This is through decreasing services rates and eliminating any unnecessary energy loss in the network. Thus, all these positive advantages will make smart grid technology a smart and efficient tool for utilities. E. Contribution to energy efficiency. The government of Saudi Arabia is already taking bold steps to adopt new energy efficiency standards as a national plan to reduce domestic energy consumption. For, for that, adopting and deploying smart grid will enable the kingdom to modernize the national grid. With the time, the government will build efficient and informed consumers as a backbone in its current energy policy. Moreover, this advanced technology will help with electricity reduction targets and contribute to lowering the carbon dioxide emissions. Thus, this is a great opportunity for the kingdom to mitigate with the climate change measures. F. A dynamic approach. Adoption of smart grid systems will help Saudi Arabia in increasing the efficiency of utilities as well as improving the ability of consumers to control their daily energy use. Smart grid technology offers a unique engagement that benefits consumers, utilities, and government to become part of the solution. In addition, a smart grid technology is a viable option to enhance the value people receive from the national grid system. This smart transition will give the Saudi government a policy option to reduce drastically its domestic energy use, leveraging new technology through empowering the role of consumers, active participants on the country grid. Women and the environment. Women and the environment are closely interlinked. Throughout history, different nations glorified women as powerful symbol of nature, and nature has always been given the female characteristics: care, reproduction, and life giving. Nevertheless, women's involvement in the preservation of the environment has seldom been recognized and documented in the histories of several nations. One of the most significant phenomena in the last decades is recognition of women's rights to achieve sustainable development. Many international agreements reflected this recognition, including Rio Declaration in 1992, which stresses the point of the centrality of full women participation to achieve environmental sustainability. The UN Conference on Sustainable Development in 2012 has acknowledged the importance of gender equality and women empowerment. The CBD identifies the integration of women's rights in biodiversity conservation as intrinsically vital. The interesting dilemma about all is, since women interact directly with the environment and because of their role as home managers, they are often vulnerable to several environmental threats and hazards, especially rural women in developing countries. The toxic environmental hazards may increase the risk of birth defects, abortion, perinatal death, and fetal growth retardation. Higher Education Sustainability Initiative. In the run up to the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, Rio Plus 20, the Higher Education Sustainability Initiative (HGSI) was created as a partnership of several sponsor UN entities: UNESCO, UNDESA, UNEP, UN Global Compact, and its Principles for Responsible Management Initiative (PRME) and UNU, aiming at galvanizing commitments from higher education institutions to teach and encourage research on sustainable development, greening compasses, and support local sustainability efforts. In 2015, HGSI officially became a member in Priority Area 2 of the GAP, Global Action Program Partner Network, transforming learning and training environments. Through its association with GAP, HESI will aim at assisting higher education institutions to develop sustainability plans in partnership with the broader community and assist universities in incorporating sustainability plans into campus operations, governance, policy, and administration. With a membership of over 300 universities worldwide, HESI, through its close ties to various United Nations Sustainable Development Platforms, provide higher education institutions with a unique interface between academia and policymaking in the implementation of 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and supporting the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. Islamic perspective on climate action. I'll prefer to refer to an article published on 12th August 2020 by Mr. Ibrahim Ozdemir, a renowned environmentalist and professor of philosophy at Üsküdar University, Turkey. Many Muslim majority countries bear the brunt of climate change, but their cultural awareness of it and climate action are often staggeringly limited. A movement of Islamic environmentalism based on Islamic tradition rather than imported white savior environmentalism based on first world political campaigns can address both. And the post COVID 19 lull in emissions is an opportunity to fast track this. It's a movement we sorely need. We surely need. My home country, Turkey, for example, is particularly vulnerable to the effects of climate change as temperatures are rising and rainfall is decreasing year on year, causing serious problems with water availability. In Bangladesh, it is estimated that by 2050, 1 in 7 will be displaced by climate change, creating millions of climate refugees. In the Middle East, large areas are likely to become uninhabitable due to waves likely to sweep over the region in the next few decades. However, despite their vulnerability, many Muslim countries are contributing to the problem. Indonesia, the most populous Muslim majority country in the world, is the world's fifth largest emitter of greenhouse gases and is doing little to curb emissions. Bangladesh and Pakistan are the two most polluted countries in the world but have taken no serious measures to address pollution. Inaction in the Muslim world persists despite a declaration by Muslim countries in 2015 to play an active role in combating climate change. You would think that those most affected by climate change would be the most eager to stop it. This is not always the case. Many Muslim countries are reluctant to impose Western concepts of environmentalism or to bow to the pressure from countries which have already gone through industrialization without having to address pollution or curb emissions. Environmental colonialism is not the answer. What would work and has been proven to work is using the principle of Islam to encourage conservation in Muslims. Islam teaches its followers to take care of the earth. Muslims believe that humans should act as guardians or khalifas of the planet and that they will be held accountable by God for their actions. This concept of stewardship is a powerful one and was used in the Islamic Declaration on Climate Change to propel change in environmental policy in Muslim countries. In fact, Muslims need to look no further than the Quran for guidance, where there are approximately 200 verses concerning the environment. Muslims are taught that greater indeed than the creation of man is the creation of the heavens and the earth. The reality is that nothing could be more Islamic than protecting God's most precious creation, the earth. It is this approach that can reach the hearts and minds of 1.8 billion Muslims around the world, and it must be integrated with, rather than neglected by, the climate movement. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, also demonstrated kindness, care, and general good principles for the treatment of animals, which form a benchmark for Muslims. He outlawed killing animals for sport, told people not to overload their camels and donkeys, commanded that slaughtering an animal for food be done with kindness and consideration for the animal's feeling and respect for Allah who gave it life. He even allowed his camel to choose the place where he built his first mosque in the city of Medina. There are also organizations dedicated to using religion to pass on the message of conservation, such as Alliance for Religions and Conservation. One of its most successful projects used Islamic scholars to convince Tanzanian fishermen that dynamite, dragnet, and spear fishing goes against the Quran, and they listened. This case also tells us that remote top down moralizing is unlikely to be effective. The fishermen had previously resisted bans from the government but were persuaded once they were told that they were acting un Islamically. One fisherman said, "This side of conservation isn't from Mzungu, white man in Swahili, it is from Quran." Clearly, we need to speak the language of those whose behavior we are seeking to change, particularly if that language is naturally averse to unsustainable policies. Some Muslim thought leaders are aware of this and are eager to develop a homegrown environmental movement to emerge as thought leaders in their own right. For example, the Dhaka Forum this month ran a panel on post COVID 19 environmental issues with the majority of speakers coming from the Muslim world. Muslim countries have a head start in the climate race. They have a framework and a belief system which mandates protection of the earth and its natural resources. As Sayyid Hussein Nasr, a prominent proponent of the religion and environmentalism movement, argues that the desacralization of the West has resulted in an ideology that humans have dominion over the earth rather than stewardship of it, which is the Islamic view. Muslims must become guardians of the earth once more for the sake of their environments and for the sake of God. A 2013 study in Indonesia showed that including environmentalist messages in Islamic sermons led to increased public awareness and concern for the environment. In 2014, Indonesia issued a fatwa, or Islamic legal opinion, to require the country's Muslim to protect endangered species. Islamic values call to save integrity and to protect the diversity of all forms of life. Professor Al Jossi commented that the ecological crisis is linked to human ethics and values. Human actions are responsible for the global ecological crisis, reflecting on the main environmental problems such as the destruction of natural habitats, loss of biodiversity, climate change, and erosion of soil. We see that all are triggered by human greed and ignorance. Human responsibility is to save and protect livelihood and ecosystem services to ensure sustainable civilization, learning from and reflecting on the fate of past civilization, said Professor Al Jayasi. He cited a verse from Holy Book Quran. Every living thing is in a state of worship. He commented that when one hurts a bird or a plant, she is silencing a community of worshippers. To celebrate the symphony of life, all humans need to celebrate and protect biological and cultural diversity. Islamic worldview calls to make a transition to a sustainable society and economy by adopting responsible development and respecting sustainability principles. This change requires a shift in norms and practices. Religion can become a powerful part of solution if humans embody a holistic spiritual view towards mankind, earth, and cosmos. In 2015, in Istanbul, the Muslim World, in its Islamic Declaration for Climate Change, set the framework for an ethical code of conduct to build a low emission, climate resilient future. Al Jawzi aspires to see a new Islamic discourse that emphasizes and links faith, reason, and empathy to ensure an ecological insight Basira. He calls to rethink educational systems that neglected the beauty and majesty of nature and the cosmos. The extinction of species around us, which are simply communities like us, umam amatul kom, may extend to humankind unless we change our worldviews and development models, warns Professor Al Jersey. He calls to revive the concept of Green Endowment Fund, WAQF, to support a transition to sustainable economy by promoting innovation, ijtihad, inspired by nature and culture. He proposed a conceptual model with three domains to address climate change and sustainability: green activism, jihad; green innovation, ijtihad; green lifestyle, zuhud. He refers to this as a green jiz model, which represents an Islamic response to climate change, embodying the concept of degrowth. Conflict and poor governance are putting the Middle East and North Africa at jeopardy. The points of Professor Al Jasi. He calls for a sustainable region that is found on human and environmental justice. An optimist, Professor Al Jasi, is inspired by Prophet Muhammad saying, "If it is the last day of the life and you have a small plant, make sure you plant it." SDG 13 targets: strengthen resilience and adaptive capacity to climate related hazards and natural disasters in all countries, integrate climate change measures into national policies and planning, improve educational awareness raising and human and institutional capacity on climate change mitigation, adaptation, impact reduction, and early warning, implement the commitment undertaken by developed country parties to United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change to a goal of mobilizing jointly 100 billion annually $100 billion annually by 2020 from all sources to address needs of developing countries in the context of meaningful mitigation actions and transparency on implementation, and fully operationalize the Green Climate Fund through its capitalization as soon as possible. Promote mechanisms for raising capacity for effective climate change related planning and management in least developed countries and small island developing states, including focusing on women, youth, and local and marginalized communities. Acknowledging that the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the primary international intergovernmental forum for negotiating the global response to climate change. That concludes my today's talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm profoundly thankful to all of you for listening to me as well as passing it on to others. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestow His guidance upon you all and grant you what is best suited for you. Allah Hafiz, till next time.